Hello, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to run through the scenarios when I actually think you should use debt or can use debt. A lot of this channel is aimed at trying to get you out of debt, trying to aim for financial freedom, at least that's what I'm trying to document. But I do accept that there are some scenarios when debt actually could be a good thing, and I want to cover when and where I think these are. So, let's go. So the first scenario, probably the obvious one, is this place, a house. I believe that using a mortgage or some sort of debt to get a house actually can be beneficial, in that you can never really, unless you're very well off or come from a wealthy background, buy a house outright, which would be the ideal scenario for most people. And actually, by using a mortgage, although yes, you do end up paying a lot more interest over the time, the fact that you get to lock in a price of a house, and that houses tend to increase over time, means that the earlier you can get onto the property ladder, it means that even though you pay this interest, your house value should in theory catch up with the interest and the principal that you pay. So by using debt to get yourself into a property, it means that you're building up that asset and the property will retain that value. I think I must caveat this by saying that I don't necessarily think, in my personal opinion, that all property is a good investment. My main rule of thumb for myself, and hopefully you take some guidance from this, is whatever you do, please do not use it to buy a leasehold property. Effectively, leasehold is just a way of saying that you own that building for a particular period of time. You're effectively buying the right to rent that house. Yes, in some instances this can be 999 years. Usually it's around 125 to 150. Some of these can be a lot lower though, and what you find is that you have to periodically renew this lease, and there are stipulations, at least when I was looking to buy my first place. So I did actually pull out of a leasehold property before I bought this house I'm in now. Because of this reason, you're tied into a contract where you have to pay continual service charges. These can go up, there's not a lot of regulation around them. I accept that if you're in a leasehold, this isn't a dig at you, and it may work out well for you and you may disagree with my point here, but for me, I feel like freehold is always the way to go. If you're going to use a mortgage, if you're going to use debt, at least make sure that you're going to buy the building and the piece of land that it's on, and that eventually you should own all of it outright with no stipulations on top. Equally, the second caveat to this is make sure you're buying in a place that's got a good location. Obviously this can be really hard to forecast, but good location, you can foresee that it's going to go up in value. Some houses do end up putting you in negative equity. All of these things you want to try and avoid. Most freehold buildings that are well established are going to do this for you. A lot of new builds end up having a higher sticker price, so you find that potentially you might go into negative equity before it then starts to tick up. So these are all things you need to consider. I usually think that buying a good solid house that's 20, 30, 40 years old as a minimum is probably a good benchmark. One. Number two, for me, is land. Now, I took out a personal loan about 5 years ago to buy a plot of land in Europe that we at the time didn't necessarily have initial plans for. Now we've decided to build a property out there. But at the time that I bought it, I had just finalised or completed on this house I'm in now. So I was really strapped for capital at that point. I didn't have a lot in savings, and this piece of land came up that was absolutely perfect. We really loved it. So I got a loan out at, I think it was about 3 or 4%. So I took the loan out, got the cash out of the bank, took it over to Europe, bought the land. and then we just left the land for a couple of years until we decided what we wanted to do with it. Now, this for me was a really good investment at the time. One, because it was just pre-Brexit, so I wouldn't be able to buy land in my personal name after Brexit, so it was important to get the money to be able to do that legally before we left the EU. So that was one really good benefit. The second benefit is that the land since then has gone up in value because there have been further developments around the land. So this kind of leans into my point around property, is that you kind of want to try and find land that has good potential, it's close enough to amenities and things that it will go up in value, it's going to be desirable. And that's exactly what we found. So it was kind of, yes, I had to take the hit on interest and monthly repayments for a while, but actually that land has now surpassed the value that I paid for it plus the interest. So similar to the house, provided that you're using debt to buy an asset that's going to at least retain value, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. So for both of those first 2 points, really the key takeaway is that if you're using debt to buy an asset that is at a minimum going to retain its value and not decrease, it's usually a good thing to use debt if you don't have the capital for that. The flip side of that is obviously try to avoid using debt for anything that's going to go down in value. What you don't want to do is have monthly payments on things plus interest on things that in future are going to become worth less. It really isn't the space where you want to be. It's really hard because society isn't geared that way. Society tells you that you should have debt and that, you know, paying for things for the next 5 years is the best way to be. I entirely disagree with this statement. So that's why the first 2 things, although not necessarily the most desirable thing to do, is buy a piece of land or a building, it's really the only 2 things I would probably prioritise using debt for if you don't have the capital there. Point number 3. Now, this is quite a contentious one actually, and I need to heavily caveat this with you have to have really good financial discipline. But I think that using debt in the month for day-to-day transactions actually can be quite a good thing. It's what we do. We have a joint credit card in our household, just the one, and we essentially put all of our groceries, fuel, any flights or things that we're going to buy, we put onto that card, but we monitor it over the month. So we spend on it as if we would be spending our actual paycheck, like our cash. Our cash then effectively just sits in the bank. So what this means is that we can, over that month, accrue, yes, it's 1 month's interest, but we can accrue 1 month's interest on that money. And then at the end of the month, we wipe the credit card completely clean. And this is what I must stress entirely, is that it is not extra money on top of the money in your account. It is only up to the money that's in your account, and then at the end of that month you clear it. So what this does is provides a layer of protection in that if your card's ever fraudulently used or stolen or any of these things, it's the bank's money they're taking, it's their responsibility, their liability. You can message them, get them to cancel it, and it's up to them to basically deal with getting that money back. You're not kind of on the hook for it, provided you can prove that it was fraud, right? And that means that your own personal debit cards and bank accounts and cards aren't being shared out into the wider world. They're just literally tied to one payment that goes to that credit card. So it's an extra layer of protection against fraud, which is primarily why I really like doing this method. The second point is that with our card, and I've put a video out about this actually when it comes to the American Express card, with our card we get points. Now, what I really want to stress on this point is be careful that you don't get suckered into spending over your means to just get points, because that's what they're designed to do, and it's the wrong thing to do. But if you spend within your means and you're just accruing these free points and you're clearing your account, that's really important, clearing your account every month so you don't get any interest charges, then technically you are getting some free benefits that you wouldn't get with a debit card. I must stress, however, if at any point you ever pay any interest, or you get any late fees, or you carry a balance, the cards are designed so that all of those fees basically negate tenfold the points that you're earning. So you have to be super disciplined with this, and I think that if you're just starting out, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this. I would probably go for like build yourself up to being able to use credit cards this effectively. I'll put out another video in a couple of weeks maybe explaining how I built up my financial discipline to be able to use credit cards like I do now. I started out when I was 17, 18 doing very different things to where I am now at 32. So that is my third point, and please don't obviously run into this if you're not fully understanding what I'm saying in terms of paying it off on a monthly basis. But that's it. Those are my 3 reasons why I would use debt. As you can see by all of them, it's solely to get a benefit, and in all of the scenarios you are gaining value rather than losing. Yes, the first 2 you do have to pay interest, but there are benefits that come with paying the interest. So effectively the interest is like it's like a payment for those benefits. And with the third one, the credit card, never pay any interest, because the moment you do, you've lost all the benefit anyway. All of these points are really difficult to manage, and you have to be really strict with yourself. When I got the loan out for the land, I had some left over, and I had to be really strict with myself and say I need to, keep that there as an emergency and then pay it off and get the loan chunked off as quickly as possible, rather than go and spend it on, loads of other frivolous things. So it is tough, it is difficult to manage, but if you can navigate it successfully, it will build up your wealth faster than if you just use savings. But as always, this is just my view, and it's what I found works for me. Hopefully, if you find it useful and you can use this for you, then that's really good. If you have any questions or you have any other opinions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them and maybe answer some of your questions. But other than that, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. It's nice to see the subscriber count going up again, so thank you to all my new subscribers. Thank you to all my old and long-standing subscribers as well. It's really great to see the channel growing, so thank you all so much. It's really nice feeling. But that's it for this video. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.